All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks a bunch for making time to watch this. I'm Hunter Taylor, author of Draw the Line, which comes out June 28th. And I thought it'd be fun to do a couple of these with some of the actual people who deserve a ton of credit for either influencing the story and or the entire football culture of the East Texas area. And we're going to start big on this one. So I'm joined by former athletic director, head football coach Danny Long, and Hall of Famer and the voice of East Texas, David Smoak. Guys, thanks so much for doing this.
You bet.
Hey, this is great right here. We could probably talk longer than Hunter. You want to record. We could, if we just got Alan Wilson, Mike Owens, and Cecil Roach, the late Cecil Roach, you wouldn't be able to air it probably.
That's a fact. So
that's what I want. I mean, I've recognized early on that I'm asking to speak with two people that can hold court. So I'm really excited about this. But I told both of you some of the I guess the broader categories that we were going to talk about for this episode. But we can dance around. But I just thought it'd be fun to dive right in first to maybe talk about Marshall back in the late '80s and with Coach Long when you were an assistant under Coach Parker, and just about that, maybe in general terms, and then we can dive right into whatever.
Well, going back to the mid '80s, and David kind of has a history prior to that, but Marshall had not been very good. And to make a long story short, we wound up with a group of kids in the '88 team: Odell Beckham Sr., young man by the name of Benny Valentine, Alfred Jackson wound up starting for Arkansas as a freshman that played '88 and '89, but '88 was kind of the story I feel that put Marshall and all of East Texas, thanks to David Smoak, kind of on the map. I mean, we had the Jamie Sexton story. I don't know if maybe one of the most gut-wrenching stories of the year, and it was not even related to football. I mean, it was just life. And if David would kind of share that, are you familiar with that, Hunter?
I am a little bit, but I don't think that many people maybe in my generation are.
Well, you know, a lot had to do with the fact back then there was no internet, you know, so a lot of times you just didn't hear about some things. And I was working at TV at Channel 7, and Marshall was making this dramatic run, you know, that eventually went to the semifinals and the great battle. 88, right?
Yeah, quarters in 88.
Yeah, quarters. Yeah, that's right. And so I
preclude David 1 second. We had a program called an Adopt a Mav program where people in the community would adopt a Maverick, and it would create the bridge between the community and the kids. Well, the kids decided they wanted to adopt someone based off of a story that David got involved with, and just a fantastic story.
Well, yeah, and I was going to do a story because I used to cover the high school football in that area. I was television at the time, eventually radio, but I had been told about this young ball boy, and I had seen the video of him walking out on the field. He's got the jersey on, it's draped all the way down, basically down past his knees, and I didn't quite know the story, and then I heard about it. And I remember calling Coach Parker, and I said, hey, I'd like to come out and visit with you and maybe get a little information about Jamie's story. I still didn't quite understand it. And I don't want to go, like I could go forever on this. And so, you know, I did a lot of my own shooting, a video and producing and all that. I went to Jamie's mother's house. I went to his house, and I was able to do an interview with his mother, his sister, and then Jamie's, I think, had a mattress that was in the middle of, he walked in the house, and there was this mattress on the floor where Jamie would sit there. It was kind of like his shrine to watch TV. And in the end, Hunter, the story was, here is Odell Beckham Sr., and here are other players on that Marshall Mavericks football team as they're trying to make this march to a state championship. 2 or 3 or 4 of them hanging around Jamie around the mattress. And there is a video. I mean, I shot it. Like I was just like, I never said very much. I just shot. For once in my life, I was speechless. I just shot it. And I did interview Odell Sr. and a few others. But there's a picture, and I'll try to share it with you. So there's a picture, and Um, Odell Beckham. Here's Odell Beckham just sitting there, just rubbing Jamie's hand. And, he was bruised and his face was, kind of marked up and puffy. And this story, I've done stories. I've been working in TV since 1981. It's the greatest. I'm not saying it's the greatest story I've ever done. It's the greatest story that I was ever a part of. And I've been a part of some human interest stories. And unfortunately, but this here, the story about Jamie, it took me several days to try to figure out how the heck was I going to tell this story. And I had people help me out that were at the TV station. Eventually, to kind of wrap it all up, Dale Hansen at Channel 8 in Dallas, famous sportscaster, as big a name as there's ever been in Texas broadcast history. Jerry Gumbert, who worked with me, he was the executive director at the time of the newsroom. He helped me a little bit with kind of some of the music and maybe try to pace it. The story eventually ends up being like 5.5 minutes long. And you aren't getting to get a minute and a half, 2 minutes in sports. It ends up being 5 minutes and 24 seconds or whatever it was. He called Dale Hansen at Channel 8 in Dallas. We ran it to lead off the newscast, not sports, not the feature section. They led the newscast with it. The reaction was unbelievable. He called Dale, told him about the story. Dale asked him, "Oh, how long is it? 2 minutes, that's 5 minutes." He started laughing. There's no way. They sent the story to him. He turned it on in his sports department. There's like 5 or 6 guys. They turn it on. He's like, "Oh, hell, we'll break this up, cut it up, edit it up, whatever." They put it in the machine, Channel 8 in Dallas. Hanson's standing in the back. The room is dark as they start watching this story. There's not a dry eye in the room. Yeah. Hanson's bawling in the background and said he was embarrassed. He's like, "Oh my God, my guys are going to make fun of me." And they all turn around. And they go, "We can't take a second out of this story." The story eventually is going to run the weekend, the Sunday after the game against Carter.
Wow.
And Jamie passed away. And I remember calling Dale on a Sunday morning to tell him, by the way, I got to tell you something. Jamie Sexton passed away, and he cussed me. He cussed me because he said, "I have spent the last 24 hours trying to read the intro into this story without my lip quivering. And now you're going to throw that at me." I mean, he was not mad at me. It was just the story, Danny. Am I right? And
yeah,
Jamie had leukemia.
Cancer.
He had leukemia. Yeah. And he, how ironic, how weird about the timing. They lose this gut wrenching game to Carter, last second game, Jesse Armstead, all the stories.
Yep.
And then Jamie Sexton passed away. It was unbelievable.
That's kind of 88, in a nutshell. Carter was unbelievable. But to get to 88, the Permian game in preseason, I mean, it's unbelievable. The limousines coming down behind, the Secret Service, they're coming down and we set them in the end zone and it's east, west and golly, I mean, just puts goosebumps on my arms right now thinking about it.
That was a Saturday afternoon game, wasn't it, Danny?
Yes. Yeah, it was a hurricane. It was hot, humid, just how we wanted it.
Yep. There you go. You wanted that East Texas heat.
They're used to that dry West Texas heat, baby. It was good 92 degrees, 98% humidity. We were rolling.
The thing you always heard about Marshall was that they always had, they always underperformed. And here comes Dennis Parker with this Converse Judson mentality and what they had done. And a part of that, and I went to Randolph High School, which is located right next to Judson on the Air Force Base. And I'd heard about Dennis Parker. I knew about him. And so methodically, he took what was there along with a great staff. And I mean, the 88, 89, 90, the run that Marshall made was memorable and always will be.
We didn't lose a district game for 3 years and hadn't beaten Longview in like 19 and then didn't lose to them during that run. Hunter, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite accounts that both you and Wayne Coleman told when I was doing research for this, I loved it. I wanted to see if you talk about it, was he keeps saying it's it was like the Russians that were in the end zone for your game, and then how like they would even go nuts when it was just like an.
At the time, Ronald Reagan and I guess was it Gorbachev? I don't my history's not that good, but we had done a nuclear proliferation plan in the Longhorn Army ammunition plant. They had flown a Russian contingency in to watch us dismantle nuclear missiles. So Dennis didn't really want to do it, but somebody in town had contacted Dennis and said they want to see a football game, and we want to bring them over here to the Permian game. Well, there was enough people interested in Permian anyway, and now here we got. Dennis said a couple guys came in black suits, and they said, "Hey, we're with the Secret Service." And Dennis said, "Come on." Yeah, you have to know Dennis, he thought somebody was playing a joke on him. And so they convinced us of this. And then Maverick Stadium, when you come down the driveway behind the home stadiums towards the old field house, they had, Secret Service in the front, Secret Service in the back, and a limousine, and here they come down the back. And then I saw Buzz Bissinger. He's a little guy, he walking around there. And so they told us this guy's going to write a book about Texas football. And I kind of wondered right then, but anyway, that's another story. And so we show them in and get them there and stuff. So when the Russians come in, we got a little section called Little Mavs, and they're it's our little elementary school kids. And when you come on the field, the home team and the visitors have to come between the Little Mavs and the home stands. So we had to escort the Russians through there without getting pelted by the Little Mavs. And then we stuck them in the end zone. Well, the final score was 13-12, and Permian's driving. Well, the Russians had been sitting down in the end zone in the hot sun with their red Solo cups, drinking that vodka. And so they're jumping up and down, and so they're driving, and then we'd have a stop. And I mean, it's hot, man. It was just down. We'd have a stop, and then there'd be a penalty. They would get another chance, and they're jumping up and down, giving the Maverick sign. And Mitch Prater and Kyle Rutherford was the officiating crew, and they're trying to get them out of the end zone. And then I'm thinking, my gosh, we're going to get a 15-yard penalty and have an international incident all in the same play, man.
That's the line.
Secret Service stop a Texas high school football game because the Russians are in the end zone.
Oh my God.
And that was read the book. That was the game, and that was real, man. It was quite an experience, to say the least. We went that night after the game. We won, and we thought we were probably going to lose, so we want to get out of town. So we drove to HEB to pick up a video, and we got this video, and it's Kilgore playing HEB, and I think it may have been all that great quarterback they had there in the 80s at HEB. But we went to watch Coach Cameron and the Kilgore team play, and we're sitting down on the Kilgore side. And out of the blue, the guy on the loudspeaker says, "And everybody, upset in East Texas, the Marshall Maverick beat Odessa," and all the Kilgore people stood up and started cheering for us. We were sitting on their side, man, and they like to kick our butt the next week too.
I think one of my favorite things also, though, was hearing Matt Turner talk about. He said post game afterwards, he said it was so good for the entire staff and team to see. It was like a level of class. Just the program, how professional Odessa Permian was at the time. And he said, like, that was such a cool thing to see, to kind of propel that we really belong at this kind of a level.
They were. Gary Gaines was the head coach. Yeah. Good friend of mine, Tim Hollinshead, Randy Mays, all those guys. That just kind of set the table. And Dennis' philosophy was, we always, we can't beat Longview. You can't beat Longview. Well, we be somebody bigger than Longview. So psychologically, in 87, Tyler Lee had beat us and we didn't go to the playoffs. And man, that was some hard rock mining in those years, some great football teams during that particular time. And then for us to go and get through district and then get on the roll. And the Dallas Carter week was, every week somebody's preparing for two teams. Mm-hmm. And Bailey Marshall was the UIL director, and he's telling Coach Parker, "You're going to play, at Texas A&M, Saturday at 4, and wasn't going to be Carter." Dennis says, Dr. Marshall, we're going to be Waco at 1:00 Saturday, and we're going to play whoever you put in front of us. It's either going to be Dallas Carter, it's going to be Lufkin. That during the week, it was going to be a rematch with Lufkin, and we played them 33-29, a great game earlier in the year. They were in our district. And we were, Dennis said, regardless, we're not prepared for Lufkin. If we've already played them once, for us to have a chance to beat Dallas Carter, we can't spend any time on Lufkin. We played them once. We'll just go back to the old game plan. So we prepared for nothing but Dallas Carter. And
it was every day there was a news story about an injunction, something legal about Carter, or it was. I remember, we'd put up the brackets on the TV screen of who was going to play next, and it was like always slash, like a game had not been finished yet, whether Lufkin slash Carter. It was back and forth and back and forth. It was one of the more drama-filled football seasons I can remember. And it's unfortunate that everybody else got caught up in that, and it wasn't their fault. Nothing.
No, it wasn't the kids' fault.
Yeah, no.
It was an administrative situation, and they were great kids, great team. There was a quarterback, Michael Hall, kid who went to Texas Tech. Dave, was that him?
I believe so.
Jesse Armstead hadn't played offense all year, and to win the game, they had him block. He released, and he hit him right in the end zone. Damon Frazier swiped the ball and missed it by about 3 inches.
Yeah, and the thing is, Carter had some issues, and they had some things go on eventually with players or whatever, but it was unfortunate. That one of the best teams that I'd ever seen. And that goes to show you how good 88 Marshall was, because they had him dead to rights until the 1 yard, whatever it was, last play of the game, touchdown to Jesse. And to have a guy like Jesse Armstead's name involved, I mean, wish he would have dropped it if you're a Marshall fan, or somebody knocked it down, like you mentioned, just a fingernail away. It was, man, it was, that's the way, and unfortunately it ended right there, but man, what a year, from Jamie to the Permian to eventually that game, the way it ended and that's why Friday Night Lights in the movie, you're talking about Buzz Bissinger, some of that was embellished about like who played that game. Yes. It was Marshall who played that game against Carter. That was the last second game.
Yeah, he kind of switched that a little bit around in the movie too.
Yeah. That was awesome, because in that time period, and one of the things I'll say, and this for sure, Danny, is that the big schools in East Texas had great history. Longview, they had not won a state championship since 1937. Thank God they finally broke that drought. Marshall, never. Lufkin, Robert E. Lee had struggled forever, which is now legacy, forever. John Tyler had Earl Campbell, and back in the day had some others. But, what happened was Dennis Parker, John Outlaw eventually, along with Pat Collins, and what Marshall did in Texas, that became, they always kind of like had to go to Texas Stadium, Danny, right? To go play playoffs.
That's we had our little system down. We wanted to play the early game.
Wanted to play the game at Texas Stadium because that was great for the kids at each program. And then ended up playing Plano and Lake Highlands, where they were unbelievable. They ran the bone, and the Plano was Plano. And finally, some coaches finally started saying, Allen, Wilson, why the heck are we always going over there? Let's start making them play games in our backyard. And it's amazing. It wasn't soon after 88, 89, 90. Then you had 94, John Tyler in that classic game where they won it all. Then you had Lufkin in 01. Lee, no one ever thought Lee would win a state championship. Danny was the AD there. They win it all in 2004. Texas High had that great team with Mallett at quarterback with Barry Norton. And of course, there's a guy named Scott Surratt was on that staff that happens to be a part of history as well. And I'm trying not to forget everybody, but it really galvanized the bigger schools, that run that Marshall made. Really, it was Marshall who kind of kickstarted all the success.
As we rolled into the 89 season, Hunter, 89 was, we got in there, and of course this class wants to outdo the last class. And we Coach Parker and the Jamie Sexton thing and the Adopt a Mav, Dennis Parker is the one that kind of instilled in us that what we're doing is we're influencing kids' lives. We're building young men, And that's really a transforming thought in a young guys like my mind and Matt Turner and Wayne. You know, I wouldn't want to say championship, to be completely honest with you.
Mhm.
And you know, we beat Permian and saw we lost to Dallas Carter, and you know, we balled, we went across and we shook their hand, and we, you could just feel the whole thing, and just, you know, I guess, you know, just feel the Marshall kids begin to, man, they were special kids, and it was just, it was bigger than winning a trophy. You know, it was galvanizing, you know, an entire community. You know, 89, we had to go out to Permian.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a dose of it for the, you know, and every time we'd have a big play, we would get a flag. And it was a thing, because we used to put like 15, 16 guys in a huddle, and we would hear what formation it was, and we would run off the field, and the 11 would stay out there. Well, that used to be legal. And there wasn't, you know, any, so in between 88 and 89, they changed the rule that you had to come inside the number. Well, we didn't know, you know, we just doing the same thing. So every time we'd have a big play, we're out there at Rattler Stadium, and we would rip 160 yards down the sidelines. That'd be a flag laying on the ground, simulated substitution. So we spent all of halftime. Nobody knew what a simulated substitution was. And they were said that we were having too many people in the huddle to deceive the defense. So we were just what we'd always done. You know, we would call a play, the kids would hear who it was. Some would be half in the huddle, half out, and then some would come running off, and some would go on the field. So, and so 89 was the year, and that's what we played Permian twice that year.
Mm-hmm.
We played them out there, and had a lot of fun with that. And then we met them again in the semifinals, and we had David Haynes, our quarterback. He's an orthopedic surgeon in Waco now.
Yep.
And David, where you are, and David Haynes, he's quarterback. Right before halftime, he scores 7 yards in the end zone. Lloyd Hill just knocks the fire out of him. Great player at Permian, and cracked his collarbone. And so we spent the entire second half playing with our backup quarterback, who was going to be our eventual state champion, Chad Fox. I coached those kids when they were in the 8th grade. I was their 8th grade junior. Me and Matt Turner were their 8th grade junior high coaches our first year in Marshall. And after that first year, I guess that was 86, Dennis moved us up. But so all these 89, 90 kids were 8th and 9th graders when I was at the junior high. So just a great team in 89. And
You know,
Permian beat us in the semis.
The David Haynes story, he did my rotator cuff surgery in
Oh, really?
2015. Yeah, he's here at Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, part of Scott and White. I remember when he arrived, he and I talked. I was like, man, talk about all of a sudden making yourself feel old. It's not just when you start talking about kids of the players you covered back when you were younger, but yeah, he did my rotator cuff. They call him they call him the artist, because his job with the scalpel and surgery is so amazing.
Is that right?
And I mean, it was, you know, that's a tough surgery, but he did an amazing job. And I never was more confident, because I knew him, and just the connection. He was the guy that in 89 almost led Marshall to a state championship that year.
So then 1990, you break through and you win it. Talk about that.
Well, 1990 was, you know, and I talk about those kids all the time, because when they were in the 8th grade, and Beckham and Valentine, all those kids were 10th and 11th graders on the 87, 88, 89 teams. And I'm at the 8th grade, and I had just gotten back into the deal, and Coach Parker asked me to do the 8th grade that first year. And so I did. And I said, Coach, these 8th graders are better than the ones you're playing with. Now, I don't, you know, I had given him a D.D. Turner, Daley Johnson, Tremaine Green, Londell Johnson, Chad Fox, Bert Ball. I mean, we had so many kids. And you know, and in that story are my offensive linemen, because Olin Buchanan wrote a story that, you know, there's no way Marshall could continue this, because they're too undersized in the offensive line. And our center was a kid by the name of Ryan Hinch. He was 155-pound sophomore. Casey Goolsby, Mark Roberson, Jeff Daniels, and Scotty Schwartz, and Toby Torrey. I remember those kids And they were just scrawny kids, but boy, they would strike you. And so we just kind of used that as our impetus to get into that season and get after folks. But we went to Waco and ran into Coach Johnny Tusa.
Yep.
And we went over there in a non-district and we played a young man named Lewis Fight. And oh my gosh, I have never been more scared of Coach Parker in my life. He was they must have beat us 42-7 or something. And we could not stop him. And that guy up and down the field. And then we went the next week and we over played Monroe Neville in Monroe, the Neville Tigers. They had a guy there, the head coach there forever by the name of Charlie Brown, a big North Louisiana guy. They had a tiger in a cage on the sidelines. and because Louisiana, they can have live animals, I guess, with the LSU Tigers. But man, and we got snot beat out of us by those guys too. And man, Dennis was mad. So him and Bill Harper would get, our defensive coordinator would get us some classic, like in '89, we'd be playing on the last play of the game. Had a young man named Mitch Mayer was their quarterback. Wound up playing for Dennis in North Texas, and playing ran the option, and he's up and down the field, and we're in the middle of the fourth quarter, and Coach Barker says, William, who's got the quarterback on the option? And William says, nobody does. Can't you see him run up and down? And I thought they were going to fight. I'm just this little, my eyes are about this, And so we throw a ball to Trinity Clay on the last play and won that game. So we were very lucky in '89 just to even get to, that was 90. Excuse me, that was 90. Get them mixed up. But Coach Parker and Coach Harper, and I mean, it was a show now. I'm just telling you, it was talking about young guys being impressionable. It was all about the program. Everything was about the program. We did the Mad Maker, which I think I called it the Indian Maker. I think Jeff called it the Nutcracker. You know what I'm saying? Or something in Gilmer. But it was just nothing. And we let them wear whatever they wanted to wear to off season, look however you want. But then after you went through that, you got the new stuff on, you got to look good. And then we would have, the kids would decide whatever their off season logo was. So I don't know. I think 1990, we put a picture of a ticket to Texas Stadium for the state championship ticket. And we had that on. I've got pictures of it at home. Matter of fact, it may have been on that picture that you put.
I got it.
Yep. But that was our off-season T-shirt. And so 90 was the first year too that we split the big school, small school. And we were the small, I think we had maybe 1,800 kids, and Aldine was the small, Aldine, Judson, MacArthur, and Marshall were the four, and we were the smallest of all of them, but yet at that time it was called Big 5A.
Yep.
So we were the Big 5A state champions that year. And then of course, all during the pre-games at Texas Stadium and stuff, everybody was beginning to recruit Dennis, and rumor he was going to go to University of North Texas and be a head football coach. And so the night before the state championship game in Judson, we're in a hotel down there, and coach called us all in, and he said, hey, this is going to be our last go round together. I got the job at North Texas, and I don't know who all I can take or whatever, but I'm going to go. I'm going to take it. So let's all enjoy ourselves. And that was a great game, the Judson game. He throws a pass on a kickoff return. I'll never forget it. Okay, they kick off to us and we run up, the Tennessee, the Miracle in Tennessee. And we ran, there was no reason to run it. He just ran it and say that kickoff. That, whoo, hello. So learned a lot of football from that man. But it was program. It was all the program.
Well, the beat where he was, Judson, to win the state championship where he had been, had to be an emotional part of that week as well. D.W.
Rutledge was the offensive coordinator, and Dennis was the defensive. Dennis was the offensive coordinator, D.W. defensive coordinator. They worked for a gentleman named Frank Arnold. Mm-hmm. And then to get it, and it was in the dome, and it was freezing outside, and it was slip and slide all the way back to Marshall that. But I mean, I go back that night knowing I didn't know where, but I knew I was not going to be a Marshall anymore. I just knew it didn't matter. I was either going to North Texas with Dennis. I was going to go be a head coach. But I knew that was it. He was the reason that we all stayed. I'd always had opportunities. I used to think he was trying to get rid of me because people would always call me and want me to come and be an offensive line. Mark Reeve, when he was down in Victoria, wanted me to be an offensive coordinator. And I said, I'm not done. I got to see my kids graduate. So, and then it was July the 4th or 7th or whatever. And the Jacksonville job, I didn't know where Jacksonville was. And I drove over there to apply, got a ticket in New Summerfield by the local constable. And I did. The superintendent wasn't there. I turned my resume in, got a ticket on the way over there. And then he called me. And I think July 9th, they hired me. And Wayne Coleman was the first guy that decided. Matt was gone. He was in Minnesota or someplace. It was before cell phones. He was gone for like 2 or 3 weeks and nobody knew where he was. Typical Matt. And he knew where he was, but we didn't. So I'm putting together a staff, and Bill's trying to put together. Danny, who you taking? I said, whoever wants to come. And so I wound up taking Johnny Richardson was our defensive back coach, and Wayne Coleman, Matt Turner, and Kyle Preston almost came. But I mean, that was Williams' hub, and for William to get those kids back on track and then get them back, I guess it was 2 years later, got them back rolling, was a testament. I learned about Dick Sheffield, John Paul Young, all those guys at one time with Lynn Graves. They'd all coached together in Jacksonville. Coach Sheffield had come back, and him and Bum Phillips were good buddies, and Bum had came through Jacksonville. So coming off the state championship, off of Dennis was a pretty high profile dude at that time. So I came into town. It was kind of a big deal. And thank God for Pat and Robin McCown.
Yeah.
A pretty good coach.
Yeah. Now they're spreading all that talent elsewhere. Rusk, and there's certain cities though, you're talking about Pat and Robin, and I got to know them. They're fantastic. And of course their kids, like the Groveton always had the Horace family,
Yeah.
and there's certain cities that you see success in it, a pretty long-term deal. There's usually some pedigree there from a family or two. And of course, the smaller the school, the less amount of people. But yeah, I remember when I started hearing about Danny. I knew Danny when he was at Marshall, didn't know him, really didn't get to know Danny until started covering Jacksonville. And I looked at Jacksonville's history. They didn't have much success. I mean, there was a 9-1 team, didn't make the playoffs. It'd been a while. It'd been a long time. And man, you could start to feel it. Did a good job with that. I mean, I'm talking about made them tough as heck. What he did with bringing what Matt Rule, who's now, of course, with the Carolina Panthers, you talk about the program, it's the process and how he built that process and the coaching staff. Think about the coaching tree. It's incredible. And man, they were coming. You could feel it. You could feel Jacksonville, like Jacksonville. And yeah, Jacksonville was coming. You could feel it.
And the pretty thing about that is we get all the Tyler coverage. There's not enough news in Tyler for 3 TV stations. And so we were a little side story for them, and the media's been good to me, from every standpoint, not just David, but all of them. They have been, starting back with Marshall, and I always used it to, they're a pain, and always want to be first. Golly smokes! I mean, somebody would just tell me something. I swear they would leave the thing, and Smoke's already buzzing me. I heard such and such is going to go to say, golly, the guy just walked out the flipping door. How do you know that? And so, okay, well, don't. Can I have 2 minutes at least? Let me call a superintendent. And it was real, and it was before Smoky.com, and Smoky.com completely changed high school football in East Texas. Trust me, it got me a raise a few times. I hear you're going to such and such. Hey, Smoke, man, put this in.
Yeah. Oh my God. That thing became like its own. I can't even explain it. I don't get to spend nearly as much time on there, but coaches either loved it or hated it. I mean, well, didn't Hunter, you write part of the book? Jeff banned my website.
He
I'm not
did.
getting ahead of ourselves, but he banned my website from in the field house. Kids couldn't get on it. It was crazy. Oh,
Yeah,
there were some threads about Jeff Traylor and Gilmer now. You know that.
Woo! I don't know who he learned that stuff from. But,
Yeah. Man.
well, Randy, Josh, and Luke speaks for itself. You know, Randy was a ninth grader. When I just knew when he's a ninth grader, I had a young man playing quarterback named Shane Big Horse, my first year there. And we won 2 games. I think we were 2-8. Shane was a real good safety, real good athlete. And I watched Randy his ninth grade year, and I knew it was just a matter of time before I did it. And Shane had thrown for like 2,000 yards, and we didn't beat anybody. And that was a kind of a big deal to come in. And Shane was kind of one of them preseason all-state type picks at quarterback, and he played a couple of games. I said, Shane, I got to move you to quarterback. I mean, I got to move you to safety. And then I brought Randy in, and then we got on a roll. We had lost Henderson, Carthage, Kilgore, lost all of them, just embarrassed us. And then I put Randy in, and we beat Hallsville 9-7, beat Pine Tree. And then we went on a run through district. I think Mike Schulke at Athens beat us by 2 points one time. And then we get a rematch with Kilgore, and they're like number 7 in the state, and played them in Rose Stadium. And we beat them. And that was kind of the thing that just catapulted us up. Prior to that, I say that Dickie Meeks, the late Dickie Meeks, was the head coach at Chapel Hill and won a state championship previous to that. And a young man named Tremaine Mack played in the league several years. And they were 4th down and 1 on our 1 yard line, and they're getting ready to score and going to knock us out of the playoffs. And then we stuffed them, and that's what put us over the hump. And then we went on to go to the playoffs, and then we beat Kilgore with the rematch. And I mean, we just, from the 90s, we just, you know, I tell my coaches that I supervise here, look in the bracket and look who's always in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, and go find out what they're doing. Because winning high school football games is not easy, you know, and because they coach their kids too. So I always want to find what's the one thing you do that you think separates, one of my interview questions, that separates you from your competitors. And, you know, I could answer a multitude of things, but the biggest thing for us was be a good person. You know, make these young men care about each other, be selfless. That's the stuff that we learn through the Maverick Maker and the Nutcracker and that type of stuff. It's about us. You know, and you think in the league. I think back to years, you know, when Kaepernick, when the Harbaugh brothers were playing each other, and the Ravens beat them. Well, the Ravens were playing for Ray Lewis. They weren't playing for a Super Bowl trophy. He was going. So I think, you know, in '88 we were playing for Jamie. You know, I mean, it's more than just a game. It's more than us. And you know, I say it all the time when I speak. Other than the United States military, I think that high school extracurricular sports is the best builder of character in America. I don't care whether it's public school, private school, whatever. But when you take everybody from all different walks of life and you stick them together on a team and you try to get them, this is not about you, this is about us. Well, that's what I've learned in my life. And you teach that, you're going to win a bunch of games. It didn't surprise me in the slightest that Jeff Traylor had the success he had. Not one bit. He came to me with the plan, and he wanted to see how we were doing it. And I'm telling you, years later, when him and Matt, they're doing a pass league, Coach Parker took a job in Idabel, Oklahoma, and that was his alma mater. He came down to a pass league thing, and this is I've been in Tyler 7 years, and I was in Jacksonville too, but I've been in Tyler 7 years, and they were over there. I didn't get a chance to go see them. But Jeff Traylor comes up and finds Coach Parker and sits next to him, and he had the Coaching to Change Lives curriculum. This is the newest version of it right here. And he had yellow stickies. Coach, how did you teach accountability? What did you mean by this? And I mean, that made an impression. Dennis called me and says, hey, this guy, he's the real deal, isn't he? I said, yep. Yes, he is. I said, he better meet you either one, Coach. He's got the whole package. And he is just, he's just a good kid, man. He's just a sweet spirited, very, very, very good person. And he really got a lot of move-ins.
Well, we reported all of them.
Good kill kids there too.
I'll never forget the one though, and I don't even think I was in Tyler anymore. I was the Blake Lynch move in. That was towards the end. Dennis Alexander. By the way, did you see he's going to be in the Texas?
And I will be there just for that.
Thank God. It's the most overdue.
Amen.
Coach being put into the Hall of Honor, and I know there's many of them. We're looking at one right now, but oh my God, it made my week. I talked to him last week, but yeah, that there was always, and listen, you still got to coach them. They still got to do all the things you want to do. But we used to have the long, you call it a thread. There's a post. It could be Danny Long or what, the ones about Gilmer, where other than when Gary Joe Kenny was shot in the field house in Canton, which was the longest thread in the history of maybe websites, the Gilmer, Jeff Traylor, and all of they'd like run my site. I could walk away. I should have, like, if it would have been a stock, I'd be a millionaire. Gilmer, Jeff Traylor, boom, oh, he used to get so mad. Oh my God. I'd get a text from him, my mother, or I'd get he's the best. Oh, he's the best. He's the best. Man, Danny, you turned that thing, you turned it in to a winner.
Well, they were.
Now you see all what's going on.
Josh, played 18 years in the league. Luke, 14. And Randy may have been better than the other two in high school. So it was a process that I'd learned from Dennis. I morphed it to fit Jacksonville, and I just remember Jeff came up to me and we were in off season. He said, Coach, I think I'm going to chance to go. What do you think? I said, go. You can always be a assistant coach. Go. Hometown was the only thing that concerned me.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that concerned me, but he's such a good person. I knew he would be okay.
I think that even back then, Hunter and Danny, that there weren't a lot of coaches that went back to coach their alma mater. And now that happens a lot. That happens quite a bit. I'm just off the top of my head in the last 10 or 15 years, it seems like that happens a lot. And it's not always a success story. Right. As you said, there's some potholes. There's some grenades and landmines when you do that. But has he turned that place. Wow. Unbelievable success since he arrived.
Just all of it. And so now he's in the big time. He's like you, Smoak. He's big time.
No, do you guys know that the day that Matt Rule was introduced in Waco as the new coach at Baylor, coming off all the scandal and the dumpster fire they were in, I'll never forget this. Jeff and I are on the phone. Jeff comes up to Waco. He had been in touch. I think that Matt was going to be smart, which he should have been. He eventually hired Joey McGuire. He eventually hired David Wetzel, who was the president of the Texas High School Coaches Association, and also Sean Bell, former Baylor quarterback, who's a pretty up and coming coach at Magnolia, one of the Magnolia schools. Jeff was one who wanted to look at that opportunity. They stood together on the sideline watching Gilmer against somebody from West Texas. That Matt Rule and Jeff Traylor, they almost worked together. And Matt, they became very close. Jeff almost worked at Baylor. I think eventually, because that's right after Charlie had been fired, Charlie Strong, or was going to be or had been. So he was looking around. I think he went to SMU. Jeff did. But That's how close he almost became. Who knows if Matt Rule would have hired him, then goes to the NFL. If Jeff Traylor at that time, he had his offensive coordinator and all that stuff. I don't know if Jeff would have had that opportunity, but you know, you look at history and he might have been, hell, he might have been a head coach at Baylor.
Mm.
He's done a hell of a job though.
You're good.
Yes. Coach Long, I loved, especially when you would talk about your friendship relationship with his brother, Kurt. And I love how Kurt talks about you. I just thought it was such a cool thing because I know it's just a fascinating friendship.
Well, Kurt was Jeff. Hey, coach, I got a good offensive line guy. Bring Kurt. So I'm the offensive line guy. So that's I don't think Kurt. So I'm the offensive line guy. What do you mean? What do you mean? You could bring your brother in? So anyway, and it didn't take me long to realize that Kurt he's a good offensive line coach. He's still the second best offensive line. And he's really good. So Kurt was single at the time, and he came down the hill a little late one time, and just a few minutes later, or whatever. And so, I didn't mince any words, and so I'm down there, and Jeff's looking at us, and me and Kurt are exchanging ideas about it's all right to be a few minutes later, whether it is or not. I'm just glad Kurt didn't punch me. Because I was dumb. I was old, I think, I'll whoop his butt, and them trailer boys can box. But Kurt is the only guy that I did turn the offensive line to. And then he worked for me for, I don't know how long, but he went to work for JB at Texas A&M, JB Grimes. Kurt and I used to go work the camps. Kurt and I went and work the A&M camp with JB Grimes when he's the offensive line coach, and Jeff and Kurt later worked for him. And then we all went, I think it was the first year that they went to Gilmer, and we all went up to the Nebraska camp when Coach Osborne had just stepped aside, and Frank had gotten that job. What's his name, David?
Frank Solich.
Yeah, Frank had just gotten that job. And there was a legendary offensive line coach up there called Milt Tenneper.
Yep.
That Kurt's got a picture of me. And so Kurt and I worked that week, the Nebraska camp, and worked all week with Milt Tenneper. And, and that's another thing, that the Jacksonville thing taught us was, when Randy went to A&M, all of a sudden you've got a source of information. If you got Randy McCown, well, guess who else I had? I had Richard Whitaker. I had Jamie Hightower. I had a bunch of other future Aggies that were in my lower classes. So we would follow Randy to spring ball. And when they were not in spring ball, like leading up to it, Steve Emsminger and RC were there. And so we would make a list of questions that me and Matt and Wayne, we would write out our list of questions on the way there. And so we would go to where our kids went to college, and then they would give us a film and give us a key to the film room, and we would lock ourselves in there, and we would watch film, see if we could get our questions answered. And then one of those guys, Tim Hollinshead or Emsminger or one of those cats would come in and coach us up. So that's how we advanced the passing game and got it to kind of where at that time I was the only guy at that level, spreading the ball all over the field, throwing the ball all around, because Coach, we'd done it in Marshall, but in Marshall you had Odell Beckham and D.D. Turner and cats like that. But we were a spread type team before everybody else was a spread type team. And then Josh comes and he goes to SMU, and the guy there by the name of Mike Keck or somebody, he was a football guy, and we learned a lot of football from them. And then Luke comes and goes to Louisiana Tech. Jack Bicknell was there, and then the little offensive coordinator that's with Sean Payton, he was a GA, and so we would go into the film room, and those guys would be in there, GAs and stuff, and we would watch Luke at practice and do that. And then I would go with Bicknell. He was an offensive line guy. And then Matt and Wayne and Jeff at that time, that's how we got information. I wanted to go where they were getting the job done, and we could just get more football information. That's probably so. When somebody asked me, "Does it surprise you about Jeff Traylor?" I said, "No, because whatever Jeff Traylor's doing, it's the best way to do it in the country." Because after he got it, when he's at Gilmer, he's following Chad Morris, he's following Gus Malzahn. He's going to find out from those guys how they do things, because that's what we did. When I was with Coach Parker and Marshall, we went to SMU and talked to Tom Rossley and Forrest Gregg. I mean, Forrest Gregg was the center for the Green Bay Packers, in the Ice Bowl.
Yep.
And
Vince Lombardi. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, those are the people. I say that, and it may have been Bill Curry, but Forrest Gregg was an offensive lineman for Coach Lombardi. And so that's how I learned the game. Coach Parker said, "Hey, where are we going?" We're going to go to SMU. We jump in the car and go to SMU. Coach Parker speaking at the LSU clinic. I forget, guy there by the name of Sam Nader was the coordinator guy, but I forget who the head guy was at that time. Dennis went down and spoke at a clinic, and we have all access to that. So, and the good thing about football, you don't recreate it. This shotgun stuff, they used to call him a spinner back, and it was back in wing T when they started in the shotgun, and everybody played in a phone booth, and they would snap the ball back, and they call him a spinner back. And so to see the game evolve, and there's still the same number of people eligible back in the 1930s and 40s. And there's still the same number of yards as far as width and length, kind of like, baseball pass. Who picked 90 feet? A pretty smart person. No matter how physically gifted we get, it's still hard to hit a ball and get on base, So with football, you just got to go learn it, man. I mean, the opportunity's there, and it's still not X's and O's, it's Larry's and Joe's.
Yeah.
But you don't get to utilize the Larry's and Joe's if you don't know the X's and O's.
Successful people never, ever get satisfied with learning from other successful people. Now, and then when you get to a point, Dave Aranda told me this, Baylor's football coach, about a week ago. He said, he used to be the one going to all of these places. He worked all over the country, got fired in Hawaii as an assistant coach, went to Utah State. He was everywhere, went back to his old high school to coach. But now his phone's ringing. People are calling him because of what he's meant and what he's doing defensively with what he did at Wisconsin, what he's did at LSU, and now what he's doing at Baylor. So now you're right. You never, Bill Walsh, one time, I believe it was Bill Walsh. He won what? Super Bowl after Super Bowl with Montana and company. Yeah. You're not, if others are doing well with it, nothing wrong with stealing it, not stealing it in a bad way, but stealing it, learning from what they're doing. And Danny and them did that all the time and just kept picking the brain. And then eventually people started picking their brain.
Me and Matt and Jeff, when we went to a clinic in Dallas, talking about Bill Walsh, and remember when he left the 49ers, he went back to Stanford?
Yep.
One of the big things I remember Bill Walsh told us, he says, couldn't believe in college football that linemen could run down the field and block down the field if you threw the ball. You can't do that in the NFL.
No.
And he says, that's a tremendous advantage over the defense. So, man, we started that jailbreak screens. We went and thought of every possible way, the spot pass and all the things that you see now. That's where I'm sure somebody else thought of it, but that's where what got our wheels turning was when, we heard Coach Walsh say that. I heard Joe Paterno say one time, you don't have to be fair, but you have to appear to be fair. Little things like that.
That offensive line rules changed now because it eventually, I think they've changed it. I'm not sure if Nick Saban got it changed or whoever, because that ability to block down the field during a pass, I think they've changed that now, where that's now kind of been that's
more similar to the NFL. I hadn't coached for a long time.
Yeah,
those are the things that, and I said, wait, we would drive all the way to San Angelo, 6-7 hour thing.
Yeah.
That's out there. That's John Paul Young. Now it was Wade Phillips. And at the time when I first started going with Coach Parker, it was, I heard Eddie Robinson talk up there one time, and he put a bunch of chairs up on the stage. And that's how he did his talk, because he didn't have a bunch of dummies and stuff. And that's how he did his chalk talks at Grambling and stuff. He had chairs and he would move the defenses and show the guys who to block. Watch some tape on Doug Williams and Grambling and do around their wing T stuff. But we would go to San Angelo, and it was more, Jeff and Matt and those guys after they left me. But with Matt Turner, Jeff used to have a rule that you'd have to have an hour break, because Matt Turner he could never stop, ever. And everybody blamed me for being up there all late hours and stuff. And Matty has got to get every question answered. He's like Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman. Mm-hmm. He's unbelievable. I've never seen, and he would fall asleep with his pencil in his hand, with a yellow pad. We're going to San Angelo. I go, don't wake him up.
Don't get that battery recharged.
I tell you, man. Have you ever had a conversation with him, Hunter?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
me and Smoak can talk. Woo.
It is like, it's straight business. There's not a lot of fluff. It's, what do you need?
He's nice. When I talk to everybody at clinics, and I would tell people that, you stop telling people come talk to me. I don't talk to anybody. Nobody come tell you. I got a job to do. He's something.
Well, this was perfect. No, this was perfect. One of the things that I loved about, I guess, wanting to try to attempt to put this story together was, I love how I think it accurately shows how, like, words, methods, mentorship is passed, and that's why when we first talked about Marshall, and then we talked about Jacksonville, and then you talk about Gilmer, and then there's just all these, and you could trace it all the way back to Converse Judson, and I'm sure it goes even further back than that. But it's just an ultimate profession where apprenticeship matters, mentorship matters, and then the way people talk about each other when they serve together on a staff. I love how y'all talk about each other. And that's kind of, I guess, what I wanted to finish with. Even when it's funny, like you mentioned before, like, there's this deep amount of respect, though, when Kirk talks about you, you talk about him. Like, it's very rare in any other profession.
Well, he's just a great coach, and Jeff and Kurt, they're just good boys. I didn't treat them so well. I was not, I was young, and I just knew how Dennis treated me. And so, I was probably a little overzealous about things, but there's nothing in my office now because I'm retiring. I've got everything in 2 storage sheds in Tyler, Texas, but I've got a yellow letter that Jeff hand wrote to me when he left and went to Gilmer. And he just talked about, no matter how I was, they knew I loved them.
Yep.
And I'll get emotional thinking about it, but I've got that framed. And he says, love your pup. And I used to call him a pup. And so they got it. I don't know what to say anymore than they're just really good people. It doesn't surprise, they got a great mom and dad. It doesn't surprise me that he's successful. I told you back, I don't know how many years ago that you called me. He may have somebody, I said, I don't know, but he's going to be good. He's going to get to the top of something. And I had no idea, he's at a 3A school in Gilmer, but he wasn't stopping there.
The relationships of coaches, and you're talking about ones who coached underneath of you and where they went, but the influx of Louisiana, you mentioned Dickie Meeks, remember what he did at Chapel Hill in '89, and eventually
David Amond at North Shore.
Pat Collins at Longview, then eventually look what John King has done. And John Outlaw was Arkansas, and what he did to bring Lufkin. I mean, and Alan Wilson, and of course, Mike Owens as well as I do, and more. Danny, he worked with you, and I mean, some of those coaches.
I worked for him.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but you think about Outlaw from Arkansas, Collins. Oh my God, Valerie, Mike Valerie from Louisiana, and then John King from Louisiana, and then Alan came out of Paris. Mike came out of Port Arthur. I mean, the amount of the ADs and superintendents or whoever who made decisions. And I'm not always a big school board guy, but some school boards made some really amazing coaching hires over that stretch, including bringing Dennis in from Converse that started the Danny Long, and then on to Gilmer and all those. But my goodness, and that didn't include, they already had Jack Murphy and Dennis Alexander and some of those great names that were a part of.
No question. And it goes a lot back farther than, I just got to be the lucky recipient.
No,
Really good quarterback. I just came at an ideal time.
You did, but you came out of California,
Yes.
And think about this: James Cameron, the great James Cameron, and what he did at Kilgore, and kind of launched them into the kind of I could go. That's a whole different show talking about the greatness of coaches, but that's just man. I'm so lucky. I mean, 40 years or so, being able to cover some of the incredible memories, the rivalries, the traditions. It's kind of been broken up because of classification changes. Jacksonville's 4A now. I mean, they're moving to 4A. But they're moving down to 4A Division I. But you think about that district with Lufkin, Marshall, Texas High. Pine Tree was always struggling, but they were in it. And then you had Nacogdoches. They struggled a lot, but Steve McCarty did a good job there for a couple of years. And then, of course, Lee, John Tyler. Oh, my gosh. Man, we were lucky to be a part of that time. Oh, so lucky to be a part of that time.
It was fortunate.
Great names. You hear about Odell Beckham all now, OBJ. His dad was a hell of a running back at Marshall. And Tremaine Green, linebacker, went to Oklahoma. And, we can go on and on with those kids from Marshall and everywhere else. But David Warren, John Tyler, that's, again, we could go off into a puzzle with all the names. Such a great run. Such a great run.
It was. Well, we're going over an hour now. I want to be respectful of your time. But thank you both so much for doing this. Like, this was awesome just to hear. And I know we could go a whole lot longer, and it's just a rich, historic place that means a lot to a lot of people. And you are two people that get a lot of credit for that. I know there are a lot of other people that deserve a lot of credit.
There's a lot of kids, Hunter, and a lot of this stuff here's a byproduct of all this stuff. Marshall, our facilities were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They're not anymore.
No.
Those kids that were on these teams in 88, 89, they're school board members now. Chase Palmer in Marshall, Texas. The Jeff Traylor Field in Gilmer. People identify with I'm still known as the guy I've been out of Jacksonville 20 years, but I'm the dude from Jacksonville, Coach McCown.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So they got a turf field down in Tomato Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Because why? Randy McCown's school board president. So they say a lot about our little towns and stuff in East Texas, and but there's a reason we are the way we are, and the relationships that we have with those kids, and those kids become young men and community leaders, and they want to make the situation good for their kids. And that's what thrills my soul more than anything. For one of those kids to call me, and he's now a school board coach, I'm looking for a coach to come in and these they're all board members and bank presidents and all this kind of stuff. And I enjoy, being friends with Randy, Josh, and Luke. They're 40-year-old men now. Josh is in North Carolina, and he calls me during COVID. He says, Coach, man, my son, he's here, and I'm afraid he's not going to get any reps. What's going on? I said, Josh, I don't know, but I know this. If there's any possible way, we're going to play high school football in Texas.
Yeah. Yep.
If there's any possible way, that's the one thing we're going to do. And he moves from North Carolina back home. And little Owen played there for Rusk, and now he's at Colorado. Josh is coaching there, and And, but just because of a relationship that we had when he was a kid, and of course his dad's just like the best guy in America. But, that's what gives an old coach a thrill now. You know what I'm saying is I can find David and we can start talking. We can do this forever, but it's just how it has evolved and how it makes the game better. And anytime we can find something for kids to do and something to feel good about themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's hard coaching now, man. It's hard coaching now. And I'll just leave it at that. But I just know that the kids that I got to coach in these 80s and 90s and through Jacksonville, the reason we have real good facilities and stuff, because they're now leaders of their community, and what happened to them playing football was a big part of their life. And that's what fires up an old man nowadays.
That's why. That's what you talked about, what athletics means, not just football, but what football means to the state of Texas. Sometimes people wonder if it's a little bit out of balance. I think it's incredible. I mean, you think about indoor facilities now, indoor practice facilities. Marshall, what Texas High kind of set the tone when they did that up there. They won a state championship. Next thing you know, they've got this college facility. Everybody seems, not everybody, but field turf. I mean, that was like, what? There were like 8 or 10 places in the Texas that had AstroTurf, right? That now, and like you said, the field houses, and it's all so kids have student athletes have what they need to become the possibility of being successful. It doesn't mean you're going to win, but it sure does make you feel good when you get there and you want to represent that area that's taking care of you.
Yeah, I want to get me a contract though for my likeness though, Smoak. I want to get for my likeness.
Yeah, your name, image, and likeness. Oh my God.
That's what I want. I want to get me a contract.
Hey,
Smoak.
Be
my agent.
That's going to be in high school. That's coming.
I told my superintendent 2 years ago, I said, this is all fixing to be your problem.
That's exactly right. You think about in college athletics, and I know that Hunter, you got to go too, but you look at, they started doing cost of living. I'm for athletes getting whatever they can get, student athletes, whatever. Then they started you could feel this coming. I never thought I used to be the old man, get off my lawn. They're getting a scholarship. They're getting free education. Oh my God. And now not only they got NIL, which is fantastic. I see it, what Baylor's doing. They got all these places have these collectives and all this. My goodness. Now you can just leave anytime you want to. And there's no years of you don't have to sit out a year, right? I mean, whether you're at Ole Miss or you're at Baylor or what, I'm not happy. And the only thing that makes me mad, and this gets me, do you know there's like over 1,000 college basketball players in the transfer portal, 1,000 football players in the transfer portal. We always hear about the guy that goes from Clemson to Ohio State or from Texas to whatever. But what about the 75% that they're sitting there at home right now and nobody called them?
Well, how about the high school kids that don't get recruited anymore? Because the college guys are just waiting on the portal. Yeah, sorry, Hunter. I get fired up on this stuff though.
No,
man.
High school coaches are, excuse me, can I say it?
Go for it.
They're pissed. They're furious. Excuse me. Their kids aren't getting recruited because they could just get somebody who's a seasoned college player.
Just wait.
Yeah. And
everybody recruits the same guys, the ones that nobody can get, and they go in the portal and they got to create a relationship. It's interesting to hear those guys. I don't know much about it. I just know that it's hard rock mining. Man.
I had a guy on today that
things
covered
have changed the world.
Yep. And that's going to be antique here pretty soon. A young man, Demetrius Davis, the quarterback at North Shore, big star quarterback, won 2 state champions, Hail Mary, beat Duncanville, goes to Auburn. He's in the transfer portal. He's sitting in an apartment across from where they're practicing, where Auburn just wrapped up their spring drills. No one's called him, or he thought. Here's a guy that was a superstar high school football player, but he's got to take responsibility. He entered the transfer portal. He wasn't getting enough time, didn't like the way things were. Guess what? I don't know where he's going to end up, but no one's called him. If they did, they lied to him. That's another story. That we keep saying that's another story. But the bottom line is the core foundation of Texas high school football is as good as Florida is. Louisiana, bang for your buck per capita. Georgia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, California football. Nothing compares to the history, tradition, and commitment of what's produced every year in the state of Texas.
The man I worked for in California was Mike Garrett's high school coach.
Southern Cal Heisman Trophy winner, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And yes, and he used to come and watch me when I was a head coach in Jacksonville. And he says, here's the difference, Danny. Great athletes everywhere. In Texas, this football is important to the men in town. And that's
Yep.
what separates it.
There you go.
That's what separates it.
Yep. Just like on college campuses, it's important to those who are the alums and donors. You know, it's just at the college level. Yeah.
It's a perfect ending. So
All right, buddy.
we're gonna shut it down. I'm gonna stop it. We can keep going afterwards.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
No,
Thank
you
y'all.
don't ask us to say anything else because we will. The two of us. Hey, Hunter, it's an honor to be mentioned in your book. It was an honor to write something about your book. It's an honor to be on this particular series right now with Danny Long, who I love to death. And appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. It's great to try to keep that tradition alive.
Appreciate everything you've done for me too.
Hunter, this is a big deal, buddy. I really hope it serves you as well as it's going to serve our tradition of East Texas football, because that's where the good Lord that's where I'll go to meet the good Lord, somewhere up there. I said, just burn me up and throw me in Caddo Lake somewhere, buddy. I'll be good.
We'll have an urn at the Tomato Bowl. You know, like
I'm shutting it down right now.
David, how often do you get